want to start?
I want to start with the injuries.
Okay.
Because that's always the most interesting part of Exit
So
Interview Day.
we'll go with the two top defensemen first, because we've talked for months now, basically, about Sanheim and York and what they've been dealing with along the way. It seemed like they both maybe found a second wind late, but it was very clear they weren't healthy for a while. What did we find out about them today?
Well, Sanheim didn't go into details of the exact injury, but he acknowledged that he was hurting.
Naturally.
He said that, especially, it seemed like he was implying, especially in the first half of March into the second half of March, he was hampered from his skating. He said that, though, it got better, that he did a better job of handling it over time, and by the end of the year, his skating was mostly back, which more or less lines up via the eye test.
Yeah.
That it did look like the burst was coming back. By the end, there were a few rushes in those last few games when the Flyers got back on the on the winning side of the ledger, when Sanheim started looking more like himself.
Definitely.
So that all tracks with Sanheim. It wasn't any secret he was banged up, but it's always nice to hear when players don't try to lie to your face and acknowledge that, yes, I was hurting. I was not just, wasn't just a hockey hurt. It was like,
Right.
no, I was playing through some shit. Cam York also, and this is something I had been hinting at for a long time about him. And I actually want to talk about Cam York specifically before we get to Drysdale, who's the most interesting one. But Cam York reveals that he had a grade 2 AC sprain suffered in February. That was in the Toronto game. That was a few days before the outdoor game. York essentially said, frankly, admit it, I probably should have sat for a few games, but I really wanted to play outdoors. And so they gave me a shot. I dealt with it, and I played through it. I don't love that.
That's why it can't be their choice.
I don't love that.
Ever.
That said, even though I don't love that in terms of what it says about the Flyers' lingering willingness to let the inmates run the asylum, the fact that we know, this is a 4 to 6 week injury. Not necessarily 4 to 6 weeks in terms of a guy being out, but in terms of a guy taking that long to be back to 100%. The fact that Cam York played as well as he did, because he was their best defenseman in March.
Yes.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
The fact that he played as well as he did, getting the workload he was getting, while not particularly close to 100%, that has me legitimately really excited about what he might be able to do next year.
Fair.
Because if 80% of Cam York can do that with 25 minutes a night, I'm excited to see what 100% of Cam York can do
That's a good point.
with that kind of workload next season.
No, absolutely. One of the more encouraging parts of this season is the step Cam York took. And while I am disappointed that we did not get the Travis Sanheim three-peat for the Pelle Lindbergh Trophy, because that's objectively hilarious, a guy being most improved 3 times. York, I do believe, you go back 18 months, he didn't make the team.
Yeah.
And now he's their best defenseman.
Yeah, and it's funny. I want to give a little inside baseball on that idea that the Sanheim most improved. As funny as you find it that he's won the award twice, the players find it just as funny.
Oh, come on, guys. You could have done the funniest thing.
Don't they vote on this?
Because it was kind of a running joke, because Joe, the Flyers PR guy, has to go around and get the votes, and so many players, when Joe would ask, she's like, Sandy, give it to Sandy, and Sandy's like, no, you can't give it to me again.
You idiots.
So,
oh man,
you had the opportunity.
You blew the playoffs. If you had given me this, I would be a lot more lenient on you today. Honestly, knowing this now, I'm double disappointed.
So don't.
You knew the joke.
Don't think that they don't find it just as funny as you do. They find it very
fools.
funny that he's won twice and he had a legitimate case to win it a third time this year.
If he keeps up the pace of his first 2 months, he has to walk away with it because he gets Norris votes.
Yeah, then he finishes 65 points.
Yeah, I'm not saying he wins. I'm just saying he's on the ballot. But Cam York absolutely did deserve that. So now we get to Jamie Drysdale and the health of the defenseman brought in as the Cutter Gauthier replacement in the trade with Anaheim. He obviously had a rough start to the year. He played the first 2 games for the Ducks, the 10th, October 14th and 15th, and then does not play again till December 21st. And 8 games after that, gets traded to the Flyers, basically. Plays for the Flyers, and then he misses. His last game was at Pittsburgh, 2/25. Doesn't play again until April 1st. Turns out he was never healthy.
Which we kind of knew.
That's true.
But now we know.
And
well,
you have to hear the way he answered this question.
We know. We still don't know for sure. But take a listen to this line of questioning that I had with him on exit interview day, and tell me what you think.
Jamie, when the Flyers traded for you, we talked to you the first time. We asked about your health, and you more or less said that, I can manage it. Were you battling injury pretty much all year?
No excuses, but, everyone deals with stuff, so, just gonna, work this offseason to try and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Is there anything you're going to need to get cleaned up, or is that still unclear?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Who can say?
He was trying so hard not to reveal.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
I'm still new here.
The initial pause when I asked him the question, he's like, 5-second pause where it's like, well, obviously I was injured, but I can't say, but obviously I was injured. Like, that is as clear as you can get without getting a direct answer that
I'm glad
he was battling through some things pretty much from the start. And also he's probably going to need some sort of surgical cleanup this summer.
This is, on one hand, all right, I'm willing to give him a bit of a pass for the lack of production and kind of being underwhelmed. Those first 2 games were electric, man.
Yeah, he looked real good
like,
there for a
okay, we got a piece. And now, I still think he has a good ceiling. I just have no idea what it is, and I very much doubt it's top pair defenseman. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. It still has the high
pedigree.
The tools are obvious. Like, you look at this guy and, all right, man, that's skating unbelievable. You see the offensive instincts. He has had a 39-point season as like a 21-year-old or something. Like, the tools are there, high draft pedigree, but now I'm a little worried about this injury. It's not like he's the biggest guy, and I know you dispel if being big prevented injuries, like Rasmus Ristolainen.
Risto would have played in 2 games.
Exactly.
Eric Lindros, a goddamn monster out there. I mean, prone to concussions is a little different than injuries, but still, not the biggest guy. He's gonna take hits. If we talked about this when we had that conversation about if you can get one back for the playoffs when they were both still out, is it Risto or is it Drysdale? We joked about the idea of, well, we want to see playoff Risto, obviously. Right. But my thinking was also, if I'm a coach and Jamie Drysdale's out there with clearly some sort of shoulder, I'm dumping it in on his side every time and saying, go hit that fucking guy. Yeah. And that's going to happen. He's not the biggest guy. I'm a little worried about these injuries piling up for him early in his career.
So I guess it's funny because it seemed like a lot of people on our Discord, a lot of people on social took it the same way you did, where they took that revelation as a bad thing. I guess I took
it's both.
I took it as a good thing because it's like, okay, we saw how much he struggled this year. Yes. It makes me excited to see what he'll look like after an offseason where he has a chance to recuperate, hopefully get some work done, and then come back next year at 100%, hopefully.
Yeah.
That, I looked at that as a positive because if he was 100% healthy and played as bad as he played in a lot of these games, I would be more concerned about his long-term upside than I am. However, I can't deny that there's an injury concern there that, if he's having another surgery, even if it's not a major one, might just be like a relatively minor cleanup that he needs to get done to make sure whatever he was dealing with all year heals correctly for next season. It could be that relatively minor because Kevin Kurz did ask him later, didn't include this in the clip, but he did ask him later, have you been told you'll be 100% for the start of camp next year? And Drysdale unequivocally said yes. So if he's having a surgery, it doesn't seem like it's one that has like a 6 to 8 month recovery timetable, which is good. I get why there's concerns about his injury proneness.
42 games played over the last 2 seasons. He's played half of one season over the last 2. That's concerning.
I get it. I guess my thing is always, I understand why people are like, well, guys who get injured always get injured. They do until they don't.
Yes.
There's always a Justin Williams who spends his early 20s injured all the time and then is a friggin' Iron Man from age 27 to age 36. Like,
Fair.
Injuries are fluky.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're not. Is it possible that Jamie Drysdale could be an injury-prone guy his entire career? Sure, it's possible. It's also possible that once he gets past this most recent thing, he'll have 3 straight years of 82 games. I don't necessarily decide that a guy is always going to be injured just because he's gotten injured a few times.
I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but like now it's another, all right, this is something we got to watch out. Like it's just another red flag en route to developing this guy that they don't think was developed properly to begin with.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
he has to revamp his defensive game. He has to totally reacclimate to what this John Tortorella system is if he's going to listen. He's a highly skilled guy. But he doesn't appear to be like a 90-point defense. Like this ain't Roman Yossi we're talking about. And what are we seeing with, okay, guys who have good offensive upside but can't defend, at least in the coach's eyes, can't defend? They don't play.
No.
And if the dude, if the coach doesn't like the dude we got for Cutter Gauthier, that's a little concerning.
Yeah.
It's just another thing to worry about along this way, but I got to catch up on some.
Yeah. Like the fans don't have enough things to worry about. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about Travis.
Now we have
Konecny.
Travis Konecny, and the talk about him. We heard months ago that while he's not eligible for an extension until July 1st, there's going to be talks, and general consensus is that thing's going to get done on or around July 1st. I don't know if that's what we heard today, and we have a clip from TK when asked about the potential contract extension coming up.
You're obviously eligible to sign an extension this summer, and have you had talks about that with Danny, your agent?
I'm sure. I mean, down the road here, I'll deal with that. I haven't really been focusing so much on trying to get in, but we'll see moving forward.
But you can still see yourself here. It's a long.
I love Philly.
So the money quote there is "I love Philly," which truly believe he does. He's he lives right across the street from his best bud Travis Sanheim. He's obviously a fixture in that room. He took a letter this year. He's stepped up to a leadership role. He does love it here, but there was no you were directly asked do you want to resign here? And "I love Philly" is not an answer. That is a deflection.
I love cheeseburgers.
Yeah. It's a deflection.
No,
and it strikes, that very much struck me as Travis Konecny making sure that he is not giving the Flyers any extra leverage to use against him in negotiations, which is interesting because it tells you that like, hey, don't think you're getting TK at a discount.
I want my number.
Yeah.
I love it here. And I'll sign an extension if you meet my demand.
You're
Exactly.
Pay me, right?
Exactly.
And honestly, I don't know what why do this on July 1st?
Yeah.
You have until you have a year.
Yeah.
You have a whole year. And if I'm him, I'm thinking that listen, I think the team took a step. Am I going to commit to a team for 8 years when they have the exact same record or worse next year? Why would I do that to myself when I will hit the open market and it's a 7-year contract versus an 8, but I'll get more. That's what happens in free agency. You get more. That's why every players association fights for it so hard.
Well, here's the thing. If I'm Travis Konecny, I would want to get this deal done July 1 because I'm coming off a sick year as the best player on the team. You don't know what next year is going to be. Next year, you could get hurt 3 weeks into the season and not play, or you could just be shit for whatever reason. And now all of a sudden, your contract year, you've lost all of your leverage because you aren't as good as you were last year. There's a million things that could happen.
It's a risk reward. It's a risk reward on both sides.
Which is why I don't think that the Flyers need to be in any rush, because right now Konecny does have all the leverage. He is the one that the Flyers need more than the Flyers need him in this current iteration of Travis Konecny. So let it play out. See what happens in 6 months.
But the thing is that while you can say that they need him, and they do, if the goal is to win hockey games, they need Travis Konecny. He is the one clear difference maker they have up front. However, if the goal is to rebuild, they really don't need him. So it is.
Well, that
it kind of depends on what your incentives are,
right? Yeah,
and that's
because then it becomes like we didn't tear it down before, and I feel like trading Travis Konecny or whatever, indicating that you're not going to re-sign him. That's kind of tearing. Like that's a tear. Like, now we're tearing it down because now we don't have a good player anymore.
And that's
it.
Like from both sides, like if I'm Travis Konecny, I want to know what the timeline is. And if I'm the Flyers, I'm like, does he fit the timeline? I don't think we got concrete answers out of that for that question this season.
Yeah.
Like I think, like part of me thinks this timeline they know is longer than we thought a couple of weeks ago.
I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm legitimately interested to hear how Danny is going to position this stuff on Friday, because Friday is part 2 of the exit interviews. We talked to General Manager Danny Briere. We talked to Head Coach John Tortorella. That truly puts the bow on the Flyers season. Then everybody goes home. I am really curious to see how Danny talks about and frames his plan for the offseason, because you've heard some rumblings over the past month or so that this could be a busy offseason and that they know they need high-end talent. And by them saying they know they need high-end talent, it is not like, well, we know we need it down the road. It is, we know we need it and we might try to be getting it this summer. And I will just be intrigued to see how he frames his plan for the offseason, because if their plan for the offseason is to go out and spend some assets and get, a couple potential impact guys between the ages of 23 and 26, and they think they have ways to do that, then I'm significantly more on board with re-signing Travis Konecny, because then you're accelerating the timetable. But if all of his comments on Friday are more about, well, we need to be patient with the rebuild, we need to stockpile assets, we need to put ourselves in position down the road, this summer isn't when the big moves are going to happen, then you really do start to wonder, does he fit the timeline if we're moving? And I don't necessarily think it's the wrong move to say that this is not the summer to go all in. But if you say that, then you have to explain how, re-signing a 28-year-old Travis Konecny to an 8-year deal fits with your more patient timeline. Whereas if you go out the summer and you trade for 2 25-year-old studs and you empty out your draft pick pool or whatever to do it, and you trade away a couple prospects, then I get why you would re-sign Konecny, because you think you're going forward in the next couple years, and you want to be a legitimately good team for when Mitchkov gets here. You don't want to be a non-playoff team for when Mitchkov gets here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know, we can't hold the previous regime against them, but this is now 4 years in a row they've missed the playoffs. They've missed the playoffs 8 of the last 12 seasons.
Oh.
This is just so not the Flyers. They had the stretch in the 90s, right, leading up to Lindros, where they missed 5 times. But I remember when they missed for the first time in, I think, 12 years. And then that was back with a vengeance season.
Yeah.
They missed the playoffs. They draft second. For some reason, they went 22-16, drafted second. And then they go all in that offseason, and they're back in the Eastern Conference Final. And I know that's not what we're looking at this offseason, but I just setting up for a 5th straight year of missing the playoffs. They said they want to get back to being what the Flyers are. That ain't them. And I'm not saying it's a good idea, but this is such a big offseason for Danny, and how he's going to sell it Friday, and then to see how this plan unfolds.
Yeah.
I am very interested, because I don't think there's a definite right answer, but there's a lot of wrong ones.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you're seeing it with all the concerns about Drysdale.
Yeah.
Drysdale, I am in no way, shape, or form out on Jamie Drysdale.
No.
However, he was clearly a guy who this new regime has identified as someone who they think, not immediately, but over time,
He was a target.
can be a high-end guy, can be one of those high-end talent players that we all agree this team needs. And I understand why, and I do not count myself as part of this group, but I understand why if you have watched Jamie Drysdale and you have just decided this dude sucks or he's never going to play, he's only going to play 30 games a year, if that's your like certain evaluation of Jamie Drysdale, I understand why you'd be like, and he's the first guy that Briere's trying to sell us on being a high-end guy that he's acquired. And then you lose faith in Danny's ability to correctly identify the guys he's going to go out and acquire to fit the high-end talent thing. Because, like, one thing about this is that all of us agree, and by all of us, I mean everybody here, all of the fans, and the front office people. We all agree the team needs high-end talent. The one thing we really haven't talked about is the possibility that the groups have different definitions of what high-end talent is.
That is true.
Like, when we think high-end talent, we think, like, top of the lineup, freaking awesome players. If their definition of high-end talent is Jamie Drysdale, then I don't know if that's sufficient. You know what I mean?
It's the evaluation. That's the one thing.
You got to trust their evaluation, and we'll see if they earn that trust.
It's the thing we just don't have the answer to yet. Like, we like what they've done in the draft. We like some of the trades Danny has made. We don't know what he and this regime is in terms of evaluating those guys, and especially like projecting this is going to be a first line guy. This is going to be a top pair defense. Like when we talked to Keith Jones after the Jamie Drysdale trade, he's like, yeah, we're focused on center now because we think we got that guy.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Well, but I'm not willing to say no, they didn't. I'm just going to say the jury's out. And you need to wait and see. I'm not willing to write Jamie Drysdale off as a potential first pair defenseman. It sounds like you are.
I'm not willing to write him off as a guy who can be a big part of this. A guy who I'm turning over half a playoff game to. I'm like, he's my dude. I don't know if I see that. And he's played hurt. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I'm not saying I'm right. Like, I'm not fucking Danny Briere smarter than me.
Cam York.
But like, yeah, you know,
maybe that's who he was talking about.
Yeah.
So we got that guy.
Let's talk about Couturier.
Coots.
Talk about Couturier. This will be the last aspect of the exit interviews we're going to talk about on the show. However, keep an eye out on allphly.com. I will be posting an in-depth 10 takeaways article for diehards only later tonight. I will be up late writing that article, so keep an eye out for that. And if you want to read it, come a diehard. Join our crew.
So Coots had like the tale of two seasons to a degree I don't know I've ever seen before. He finishes the year with totals of 11 goals, 27 assists in 77 games. He finishes a -10. 77 is the most games he's played since he hit 80 in 2018-19. Now there's the two COVID seasons, there's the injuries, but the fact is he hasn't hit that mark since he was 26. He's now 31. Coots in the first 41 games of this season, 10 goals, 20 assists, plus 12. He looked like Coots, man.
He did.
He looked as close to Coots as we could possibly ask for, coming off of, basically 2 seasons lost to injury.
In December, the only two things that were not, I did an in-depth article for diehards only in late December, and the two things about his game that had not come back were face-offs, which ultimately did come back. He was much better in the second half of winning face-offs, and then the finishing ability around the net. And that never really came back. He told me, he's like, I think it's coming back. I'm getting closer. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. And then not only did that not come back, it never did. Everything else disappeared too.
And then in those final 33 games he played, 1 goal, 7 assists, -22. I know we don't love to use that stat, but when I see first half of the season plus 12, second half -22.
Not great.
Like, that is a wild swing in what took place on the ice when he was on the ice between the two halves. And he acknowledges it.
Yeah, we got some very, very honest quotes. The money quote I thought from him was, I just plain and simple sucked down he said road. He very clearly meant stretch. English is his second language. But just like, hey, I sucked. I know I sucked. It doesn't make it any better that he sucked, but at least he wasn't trying to dodge the fact that he was bad. He knows he was bad. Everybody knows he was bad. And while he didn't straight up say that he was gassed because of the fact that he missed a year and a half, I think he probably believes that his body was worn down. He played through one thing that probably did go a little underreported, but I think likely played a role in this, he was apparently dealing with a lot of injuries in the first half that were completely unrelated to his back. And he played through them all. And I do wonder if at some point his body was just like, yeah, dude, you pushed me too fucking hard.
Yeah,
like it's just, and not even just because of the missing a year and a half, but that in tandem with the fact that like 4 other parts of his body were injured. His back is still probably not it's almost certainly not what it was pre 2 back surgeries, that he just needs to figure out a better way of managing his energy to be able to stay effective through 82 games and then hopefully into playoff runs in the future. This year, he didn't do a good enough job. John Tortorella didn't help him much by playing him 20 minutes a night for the first half of the year. But Couturier also has to do a better job of managing his own energy and not emptying the tank in the first half, because the Flyers aren't going to do much in the future if the guy who's getting paid nearly $8 million a year is consistently a no-show in the second half of every season.
God, I just really think this is more on the team than the players. Like, players aren't ever going to not go balls to the wall 100 miles an hour the entire time. They don't know how not to. Like, Cam York is going to say, yeah, I'm hurt, but I want to play outside, so just shoot me up. I'm going to keep going. Like, that decision's got to be taken out of their hands. Like, someone outside of Sean Couturier's mind needs to look at him and say, all right, buddy, you can't play 30 minutes a night.
We've got to
I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
You might we need to manage the load a little bit. Like, somebody outside of these guys needs to be the adult to say, if we're going to have you for 82 games, we can't play you like this for the first 20. It's never going to work. And I don't know if this is a hockey thing or if it's a Flyers thing. I think it's more of a hockey thing than a Flyers thing.
That's the issue.
Yeah,
you're
probably right.
There's only going to be, like, we're never going to get NBA style load management, and I don't want that. Like,
Something
I like watching the good players play.
Even the NBA seemingly doesn't want that anymore, given the rule changes they made to the awards.
It has become out of hand in that sport. But like, hockey is a physical game, and guys are gonna have to learn to play through shit. I'm not saying he's clearly done it. He's played a ton of games throughout his career. But like, if it's ever, he was hurt. Like, I can't accept that as an excuse, man. Like, everyone gets hurt every year. It's hockey. Half of the defensive strategy is purposefully getting hit with 100-mile-an-hour pucks.
Fair.
Like, there are gonna be injuries.
Yeah.
And like, yes, they needed to do a better job load managing, and maybe that's where, like, in the first part of the season, it was like, what's the goal here?
Right.
Like, if you're telling me playoffs aren't, like,
yeah.
We're sitting down with management and they're telling us playoffs aren't the priority for them, but behind the bench, it clearly is.
Right.
Like, from the decisions they made with young guys throughout the season that we talked about in the beginning of the show up to game 82, and the decisions they made with the goaltending, the decisions they made. Like, yeah, we got to play Sam Ersson every night because he's our only chance to win. Is that the goal, though? Like, it's just, it doesn't seem congruous. Congruent?
Well, congruent?
You got there.
Well, this brings us to the second part of the Sean Couturier interview, because there were really 2 main points of emphasis in the questions asked to Couturier. The first part was, yo, Sean, what the hell happened in the second half, dude?
Yeah.
The second was, okay, you were part of one of the biggest stories of the team over the final month and a half of the year when you were the captain of the team and you were scratched for 2 games. So one thing I asked him, because this to me has always been the best case scenario outcome to all of this. Last year, John Tortorella and Travis Sanheim butted heads. He scratched Travis Sanheim for a game in Calgary when his friends and family were scheduled to be in the building. There was very clearly lingering tension from that scratch. Travis Sanheim was very hurt by it. His teammates didn't like it at all. The 2 of them, by the 2 of them, I mean Travis Sanheim and John Tortorella, had conversations in the offseason. They kind of, settled, or at least cleared the air, got past it. And then this year, Travis Sanheim was, at least for the first half of the year, their clear best defenseman. I think on the whole, he was their best defenseman if you're looking at the season in aggregate. Cam York was better in the second half, to be sure, but Sanheim was still second. And I think on the whole, Sanheim was better. Sanheim had a good year. He put it behind him. Torts praised him up and down this year, was giving him 30 minutes a night in March. They found a way past it. My best case scenario for Coots and Tortorella is always going to be the Sanheim thing. Let's go that path. So I asked Sean Couturier today, I basically asked him, do you think that you can have those same conversations? You're going to have those same conversations with Torts this summer when things die down a little bit. He said, I do. And we've had a couple already, but I expect that we will have those conversations. Then more questions were asked about the nature of Sean Couturier's relationship with John Tortorella. And this is where we're going to go to our final clip, because I thought this was interesting. Do we not have a clip? We don't have a clip. Okay. Well, in any case,
What'd he say?
He basically said something to the extent of, I'm not always going to agree with him. He's not always going to agree with me. But as long as we both care about winning, then I guess we'll be okay. And it very much struck me. And I didn't want to paraphrase. That's why I wanted to have the clip, because I'm afraid I'm going to be presenting this in a wrong way. I read that as like, they're never going to be buds.
Yeah.
Or at least right now, he doesn't think they're ever going to be buds. He thinks they can coexist. He thinks they can have a professional relationship. But I read it and heard it as if like, yeah, there's still some bitterness there on Couturier's part.
I think this should be expected, honestly.
Yeah, and this is, like you said, Torts doesn't have his exit interviews with players right after the season because, like, there'd be fistfights, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying that was the tone or tenor of, but like maybe as everyone kind of just gets the opportunity to take a step back, they can then have those conversations. Because listen, and not everyone has to be buddy. You don't have to.
No.
Who out there? Like, I mean, we're very lucky. I like our bosses here, but I've had plenty of jobs where I was like, fuck the bosses. You know, I was very much McNulty. But like
Bill McNulty.
Jimmy
my God.
Yeah, like,
Jimmy McNulty.
Like
this is a reference to The Wire. If you haven't seen the show,
yeah.
The very difficult main character.
This doesn't seem great. Like, this doesn't seem like a good situation to have your captain
Not
and
ideal.
current highest paid player, and the coach, and he's just like, I don't love him.
I guess the flip side of it, and what you can say, is that like him and LeCavalier didn't get along either, and they won a cup together. So like,
he also took the C off of him.
You can make
he
it
put
work.
it on Coots this year.
You can make it work, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, though.
No, it's John Tortorella is never going to be best friends with all of his players. I mean, I told you I was listening to, I can't remember what show it was on, but an interview with, I think it was Ryan White or Dale Weiss, one of the guys, and he like talked about watching tape of the Rangers with Torts, and like Gabby would just be nowhere near where he had to be to block a shot, and Torts wouldn't say anything. He'd just keep rewinding it over and over to see if Gabrick would be like, all right, man, I get it. And he would just sit there silent, not giving him what he wants.
Right.
And like, listen, that team went to a cup, you know, like
not under him, but
they didn't go with him.
it was the Vigneault year they went to the cup.
That's right.
Because they fired Torts after apparently everyone in the exit interviews told the general manager, like,
all right, not
we
the best
we
example.
can't deal with this dude. And then they hired Vigneault and they went to the cup final.
The two switched, right? He went to Vancouver, and then that
went well.
That lasted a week and a half. This just doesn't seem like a great situation. Like, I'm not saying they can't overcome it. I'm not saying it's not even like this might not even matter when camp opens.
Maybe not.
But at this moment, it doesn't seem great. That's all.
I just, this was my big concern always about the scratching of Couturier, is that you risk really hurting the relationship with your captain, and your captain has by definition has a lot of influence in that room. You wanted him to have that influence apparently because you put the C on him, and then you risk alienating him. I'm not saying that they can't get past it. I'm just saying that it's something that we are going to have to keep an eye on next year. My hope is that they replicate the Sanheim situation. They have some productive conversations in the offseason. They both get a better understanding of where each are coming from. And then next season, Sean Couturier does first half Couturier, but does it the entire season, and has John Tortorella praising him every third game for how much he's doing for the team, like he was doing with Travis Sanheim. That would be the hope.
That's the best. That's the best possible outcome, and it's not. Listen, like we just saw it play out with others. So
it has happened before.
It has happened before.
We all silly like the mayor.